it's our choice. I tell people, think of yourself as the director of your own life, and your life is a movie. You can change the location, casting, and if we start projecting into the future and playing a horror movie out of what if this happens and what if that happens, and you just say cut, just like a movie director. Cut.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Millionaire Secrets. Jeff Lerner, your enthusiastic host who is blessed to get to host this show and call it work and get to hang out with you fine people and amazing guests like John Livesay, who we're joined by today. He is a TEDx speaker. His nickname is the Pitch Whisperer. He's pretty much a sales and storytelling guru, aka story selling guru. In a previous life, he was the #1 salesperson at the international giant Condé Nast company out of 400 already very competitive and very qualified salespeople. And he's turned that into a career now, educating and consulting companies, businesses, entrepreneurs, etc., on how to get their pitch right and their selling right, which as an entrepreneur, it took me years, and I can say that we all still struggle. John, you do great work, and I'm grateful you're here on the Millionaire Secrets Show. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled you're here. I was just telling you, I'm partly because I'm an online, I'm always marketing my products online, still selling through stories. The day I start to forget how that works is the day I go out of business, or at least go off the rails. I've also had a number of guests lately on the show where that's kind of been a focal point. So it's really top of mind, and I especially think right now, and I don't want to date stamp this, but with all the people that have come online in the last year, during the COVID nonsense, man, so many people are finally really coming face to face with what it feels like to try to get attention in a noisy world. Even a lot of people that have maybe done offline sales or face-to-face sales or business selling, or they've been in an environment where at least they had somebody sitting in front of them.
Right.
Now they're 100% online. And they realize, holy crap! And these statistics we hear, I think I heard something the other day. Every day, people are exposed to 600,000 marketing messages every day, and you think they're going to stop and pay attention to you? You got to have a strategy.
Yes.
So how's I'm sure you're in your world that means it's good for business. But talk to me about what people are dealing with and what they need to know.
Well, Jeff, you're so right. I mean, when I was selling advertising, we'd go in and present in front of people in a room, and sometimes people would be rude and be on their phone as you were presenting. And I thought to myself, I'm not saying something intriguing enough to get them to look up. So just because you're in person with somebody doesn't mean they're going to pay attention. The same thing is true online. So I think the real strategy is listen to what your clients, your current customers are saying, what their pain points are, and use that as your ad copy or your email copy that you put in a subject line to get people to it cuts through the clutter, because they think, is this guy Jeff in my head? How does he know that's what I'm feeling and thinking? So that has been a real laser beam focus for me, is really listening to what people are saying that they're struggling with. Oh man, we're just so tired of coming in second place. Can you help us? Boom. That's a headline for me, right? Or, these sales cycles just go on and on. And I'm like, okay, that's a pain point. Or you know what? Can you teach my team to be persuasive without being pushy? Boom. Another headline, another pain point that I'm now solving through storytelling.
So yes, makes perfect sense. And that, if you're talking to a sales organization that at least has enough momentum or experience where they've got a dialogue with customers or with prospects, they're getting feedback, they can convert that feedback into headlines.
Yes.
It feels like right now, at least what I'm seeing in my world, is a lot of people that are maybe for the very first time thinking about going out and selling their own thing, their own course, their own product, their own idea, their own service. Maybe they had a job where they were working in accounting and they lost their job because of the economic downturn, and now they're going to go out and promote themselves as an independent bookkeeper, and they don't have any of that feedback. How do you teach people to at least find a place to start with crafting their pitch?
Well, I always say that you need to have a great elevator pitch. And that even that term is kind of dead. I call it an elevator story now. So that when someone says, hey, what do you do? Who do you help? What problem are you solving? That you're not a deer in headlights. So that's usually where I start with people is let's get you something clear, concise, and compelling and intrigue people enough to want to know more, whether it's a post, a blog post, an ad on social media. Have something that grabs people's attention that makes them want to know more. And that again goes back to if you're, let's say, launching a course, you've never done it before, basic, when I've helped founders get funding for their startups, you have to think of yourself like an investor. It's like, before I launch something, let me do some informal testing to a person that I've identified as an ideal avatar and say, would you open this email? Would you click on this blog? Is this resonating with you? Before you throw it out to the masses, a little pre-testing to see if you're speaking the right language, and more importantly, telling a story that people see themselves in. Because when you tell a story of someone you've helped or your own personal story of origin, as you do so well, my goodness, I mean, that is such a compelling story. We're on, pins and needles going, you had this much debt? Oh, I can't, we're in that, we see ourselves in that story and we start sweating. And then you take us on this amazing journey. So I help people figure out their own story of origin that's really answering two unspoken questions that everybody has, which is why you and why now? And when you can answer those in a story, boom, you've got people in.
Yeah, I love the way you described that, and thank you for the compliment, by the way. It's a lot easier to tell it than it was to live it, but
I'm sure
for what it's worth. But no, I love the way you sort of intimated that. Who have you helped? And then you said, or what's your story? Because a lot of people, and admittedly, this may be my bias, but I think it's also timely with the number of people that are going through a career transition right now and maybe are considering marketing themselves for the first time, overtly anyway. And then you say, well, who have I helped? I haven't helped anyone. I got a new thing. I got a new idea. I got a new service. But you did help someone. Mm-hmm. You helped yourself because there was a time in your life when you didn't know how to do it and you didn't have the value, and you built the value and you learned the skills, and you assuming you practiced them in some way, you have a success. Every person that knows how to do a thing has a successful case study.
Yes. And also I loved what you said earlier about it was harder to live through it than to tell the story. And this is something I really work with people on. The better you can describe a problem, the better people think you have their solution. So when companies hire me to speak in front of their sales teams, they know I've been in their shoes. I know what it's like to have a quota, to have to beat your best year ever, to get rejected, all those things. It's not some theoretical concept I have from just writing a book. It's like, I know what this feels like. Here's how I handled rejection. Here's how I handled disruption or being laid off and came back and reinvented myself. So the more we can show empathy through describing our own challenges, then people feel like, all right, this is somebody I want to connect with and listen to.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, even us talking, I was on your show, when was that? Maybe a month ago, 4 to 6 weeks ago. And, I knew that you were a podcast host. I knew that you'd written a book. Those are the things that I knew coming on your show. I did not know about your experience with Condé Nast. And admittedly, maybe that's my own failure to do the research, but like you just said, I feel like I'm literally already listening to you. And we had a great talk before. I was super invested, but now I'm like, I want to know even more because I know that about you. It's like the biographical details that are relevant. They really, really do build interest. And I'm feeling it right now.
That's one of the key elements I teach people is when you're telling a story, make sure you have exposition, which is who, what, where, when. Think of yourself like a journalist answering those questions. The more details we have, and my whole story of being laid off, having to reinvent myself, and then getting rehired back and winning Salesperson of the Year at Condé Nast is what my TEDx talk is all about. Being the lifeguard of your own life. Because no one, unlike in a hurricane, is going to come rescue us. We have to figure out how to do that. And it's going to involve reinventing ourselves and not taking whatever disruption comes along, whether it's a layoff or a pandemic, in such a way that we don't have some internal belief in ourselves that we can ride these waves without going on what I call the self-esteem roller coaster, because I was on it. I only felt good about myself if my numbers were up and bad if my numbers were down. And I compare myself to other people and other products and think, well, maybe, they are, I got to know. I'm like, oh, and you just, once you figure out how to get off that roller coaster, then you can really say, you know what, I'm going to be fine no matter what happens. But it does require, I think, some challenges that you can experience and then hopefully help other people when they have those come up.
So let's talk a little bit more about this TED Talk. I did you a disservice. I think I forgot to mention it in your bio. I should probably script those out, but
That's right.
I like to just wing it. It makes me feel like it's more conversational. But you have a really amazing TED Talk. It's got over 1 million views. I've watched it. I watched it when I came on your show the first time. And I watched it again about a week ago when I knew that this was coming up. So I'm a fan. I'm a genuine fan. I think I've only watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk twice. So
wow, it's a great company. Yes, I'm a big fan of his.
So yeah, can you talk a little more about this principle of being the lifeguard in your own life? And you already said it requires a certain sort of belief and anchoring your self-worth to things other than
yes,
performance that is maybe perhaps circumstantial. But what else? Like, what else is the life raft and being the lifeguard in your own life?
Well, I think the big thing is this awareness that who we are is bigger than what we do or a specific outcome. And a lot of entrepreneurs get trapped in this mindset. If my business is a success, then I can feel good about myself. If it has a bad month or a bad year, then I'm a failure. Your business is a failure at the moment, not you as a person as a failure. So when I got laid off, and listen, it felt like a kick to the gut, and I was mad and angry and scared, and all kinds of feelings were happening. But I had something inside me that said, wait a minute, you've lost your job, not your identity. And so and the same thing happened with the pandemic, right? Boom, all the live events are canceled. So it quickly becomes, how am I going to reinvent myself again? I've done it before. I can do it again. I'll figure out a way to make virtual speaking really engaging and fun for the audience and create value, whether I'm using Ecamm with special effects. So if I tell people, the goal is not to get rid of the butterflies in your stomach, but to get the butterflies to fly in formation like they are right now across my screen. People are like leaning in. Wow, that's cool. I've never seen that before.
By the way, if you're listening on podcast, go watch this on YouTube. You just missed out on a really cool effect.
Yeah. So figuring those things out. And ironically, Jeff, when something gets disrupted like that, it creates new opportunities. But if we're so in our head, feeling sorry for ourselves, beating ourselves up, feeling like nothing's ever going to work out again, we miss those opportunities. One of my clients said to me, all right, we're going to shift from a live event to virtual, but can you also train our team how to look and sound good on Zoom? Because a lot of these people have never had to sell on camera and they don't know how to light themselves or what kind of camera or mic to get, some basics, because it's no longer okay to be sitting in the dark.
So true. Yeah, and by the way, if you're listening to this on podcast, something else you're missing out on is me failing miserably at what John just described. I'm unshaven, I'm packed up. As soon as this is over, I'm grabbing an Uber to the airport. I'm in an Airbnb. I don't have my lights. I'm on my travel mic. It's a whole mess. But you're right. Like in the old days, nobody would have cared. Now I'm like conscious of it. I'm like, well, it's my old friend John. He won't judge me too harshly. But like, yeah, we've leveled up. There's a whole new virtual way of doing business. It has a higher standard now that it's the way of doing business. Before it used to be like like an adjunct or an accessory to business. Anyway, probably a whole other conversation. But yeah, so you talk about reinventing yourself. You had to reinvent yourself. You got fired.
Yes.
I'm curious. I assume you were already doing reasonably well, and then you got fired, and then you were able to get rehired. What happened there? How did you turn that process or turn that experience around?
Well, during that whole moment, it was 2008. The economy had crashed with the mortgage crisis. Luxury advertising had tanked. They laid off everyone outside of the New York office, and I was in LA, and 30% of the New York team. And from being a lifeguard, one of the skills I learned when someone's drowning is to not panic and stay calm. And so this was one of those moments, right? I got that call. They explained to me everything, and they said, we need you to be out at the end of the day. And I said, oh, I've been here 15 years. That's going to take some help to get everything out of the office.
Right.
And then I thought, well, don't you want a status report to show where these ads are supposed to run after I'm gone and what page and what issue? Well, that'd be great, but everyone else is so angry they're just storming out. Little did I know, Jeff, that one decision to do that, because I cared about my clients. I'd watch them get married and have kids. I'm not going to do that to them, even though this is happening to me. I don't know if that's emotional intelligence or whatever you want to call it, but that one decision is what allowed me to get rehired back 2 years later, because I'd left on such a good note. And had I not done that, and then I had to reinvent myself and get a job selling advertising for the Daily Beast, which was a digital platform, which I really didn't have a lot of experience doing. And a friend of mine gave me this wonderful analogy, and I think this might help everyone. He said, you know, you have a choice to make, almost like the silent movie stars. Some of them made it to talkies and some didn't. And you have to decide. And so I think that's a great offer for all of us to hold on to this moment in time. Are we going to be somebody who embraces digital online selling and learn these skills so we don't have to rely on another company's will to hire us or fire us, and have something else going on where it's going to require learning something new? Some of us are going to make it and some of us aren't. And the ones I think that are the ones that are willing to put in the work, realize it's not a quick fix, and it's not going to be necessarily easy at first, like any new skill, but it's worth it to stay relevant.
Well, you asked if I don't know if that was being emotionally intelligent or what. I think it's just being like a decent human. What you described, like you actually care about people. Imagine that, you actually care about people. And there's an upside to caring about people. A monetary, quantifiable upside of re-engaging with a business opportunity that results in being the number one guy that parlays into a career as a consultant and a speaker and a trainer and an author. And like, you could argue that your whole life now professionally stems from that one decision. And I love the fact that it wasn't one decision to like go close a bigger deal. It was one decision just to be a decent person. Mm-hmm. That's kind of beautiful. I also want to totally tell you that I'm going to steal what you just shared with me about people transferring to the talkies, as they call them, because that's such a brilliant analogy. And I would use this for so many business owners who, you know, this is man, it's like I'm realizing as I'm saying it how genius that is, because for so many business owners, they're engaged in digital media all the time as a consumer.
Yes. And
yet when they go to like do it for their business, they smart themselves stupid and they act like almost handicapped. That's literally like an actor who's been a silent film actor showing up on a set one day where he's expected to read a line and acting like he doesn't know how to talk.
Exactly.
Well, you talk all the time. Why now you can't talk because there's a camera? It's like, oh, you're on the internet all the time. Now you can't be on the internet because it's for business. So true.
Great.
Yeah, that's so true. So how did you, I mean, you know, and I deal with a lot of people, and I know that there are varying, and I'm talking about inside my business, Entre, where we have tens of thousands of students saying, hey, I'm here. I want to start a business.
Yes.
You go, all right, well, here are the tactics, but also here are the intangibles. Here's the personal development work. Right. Here are the characters and the the character and the personality requirements. So let's start growing into those. And you realize very quickly, some people have a lot of aptitude for personal growth, and some people really struggle with it. Like it's painful. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting the sense you're someone that has an aptitude. Where did that come from? And can you help me? This is a totally selfish question because I want to help students. Can you help me quantify how you get good at that, at being adaptable like that? Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which shows you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yes, when I wrote my first book 16 years ago, I was reading The 1 Minute Manager and the 4 Agreements. And I thought, I wonder if you could combine these things. And I kept looking for a book that did it, and I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, I'm going to write one. And that's how I pitched it. It's a hybrid of the two. And boy, I tell you, I had one of my best years ever writing that book, because not taking rejection personally is right out of the 4 Agreements. Don't take anything personally. right? And the stay in the moment, don't be attached to one particular outcome. All those lessons getting applied to the sales world was a whole new framework of how to get people to merge the two and not see themselves as one person at work and one person on the weekends and nights. And now that we're working from home so much more than we ever had before, I think those boundaries and mindsets of those walls have really come down. It's like, I'm the same person all the time now. I have to be. I can't be one person at work and another person with my friends and family, because it's too much work. It's no longer physically separated anymore either. So I think the more we realize, I remember when I was being interviewed to speak at a big healthcare tech company, and my speaking agent called and they said, they liked your energy, they're going to hire you. And I thought, sometimes it's just that simple. And we can get so bogged down in, here's all my credentials, here's what I'm going to talk about, here's, and then later they said, yeah, you made us feel so great. We were so inspired and motivated and happy. And we saw the power of what you're talking about with storytelling, that we thought, if we're enjoying this, we bet, our whole team will. And so I think we forget that people are buying us and our energy first. And that's the value of what you're giving your students, of the importance of working on this personal development so that you can be in your space. I always like to tell people that confident people are comfortable with silence. And the need to pause when you're telling a story or anything is part of where that comes from. And so people feel like, oh, you're having a conversation with me. You're not a robot pitching me something. And so there's the power of storytelling again. What's your story? What's your company's story? Even if you're a one-person company, tell me the story of when you came up with the name. I'm sure there's a big story about where you came up with the name for your company. It's such a unique word, right? And then we tell the story of other students who are going through the course and how their life has changed. But it starts with your story. It was in debt. Then there's a story of origin around your company name. And then there's this case story instead of a case study. That's my big thing of helping someone. And then when somebody sees themselves in that story, your closing question becomes completely different. It's simply this. Does that sound like the kind of journey you'd like to go on with me? I've had coaches use that story after they've learned how to tell a case story, and they're getting clients left and right because they're no longer feeling pushy. And it's as logical as landing a plane. When you get in a plane, they go, we're now landing in New York. No one stands up and goes, what? I thought we were going to fly around forever. We know it's the same thing with the sale.
Yeah, you said a couple things that just really resonate loudly in my mind. What is this idea? And by the way, I'll pull back the curtain for everyone. I mentioned I'm in an Airbnb. It's being cleaned right now. So I'm going to talk louder. I'm going to talk over the noise. Ma'am, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about us. And so two things you said. I love working from home or other people's homes.
Yes.
Two things you said. One is this idea of consolidating your personalities. Who you are at work, who you are at home. Some people have a side business where they have who they are in their job, who they are at home, who they are in their side business, who they are at their church, who they are at their secret nightlife that their wife doesn't know about, so stressful. And I think one of the best gifts I've ever had is I've never allowed myself, for whatever reason, to have any part of my life that was siloed off from the rest of my life. It's one of the reasons that when I was 16 years old, and admittedly I was probably at the wrong company getting the wrong experience, but as a teenager you take small data and draw big conclusions because you don't have worldly context.
Right.
I had one crappy job in the summer between my sophomore and junior years at a company where it felt like everyone was doing exactly what you just said. They were literally putting on a costume and going to work and pretending to be like it was like watching the show, Downton Abbey or something. Juxtaposed worlds. And I was like, this is stupid. This is lame. I don't like the way it feels. I want no part of it. And I concluded from that, therefore, I never want to have a job again as long as I live. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the reasons that I'm doing the stuff that I'm doing now is because I don't have all this baggage from a corporate career where I'm having to realize what it means to just be myself in a professional context. I don't know any other way to be. But I never thought about how now that people are working from home at the same place that they raise their kids and they fight with their wives or their husbands, or hopefully they love their wives and their husbands, like whatever. It probably makes it harder to keep up those facades.
Yes.
And I'm going to argue that's going to be one of the great things that we reflect in hindsight and says, thank God for COVID.
Yes, I agree. For that
Tear
reason.
down those walls, Mr. Gorbachev.
Yes, exactly.
Man,
it's
that's
the walls of our own personality. And for me, this is my whole life lesson, is who I am is enough. Regardless if I never gave another talk, sold another book, sold another course, any of that. So when I come from the place that I am enough and I don't have to prove anything to anybody else, or Jeff, even myself, then I take action from a completely different place that allows me to be my authentic self, and that people can feel that energy of, oh, you're coming from a place of service, as opposed to needing this to happen for your ego or your bank account.
So have you always been really good at being enough? Or is this something that you had to learn during one of these particular valleys?
Yes. Well, there's actually a description of this in the entrepreneur world, the trough of despair.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just the awareness that that's probably going to happen allows you to not feel like you're alone and that you've done something wrong. And then it's your choice of how long you stay down there. So I was always overcompensating for everything all the time. I have to be the best son, the best student, the best friend, the best everything, the best employee, just to feel okay. And everything has to be perfect all the time, or I'm going to feel really insecure. And I was, that's a very stressful way to live. And always, and now I tell people, listen, as a former recovered perfectionist, I think of myself as a progressionist who celebrates progress instead of striving for perfection. And, like if we're climbing a mountain, we're halfway up, we can look down, we go, look how much progress we've made, or look how much further we have to go. You're totally into fitness. That's part of your secret sauce, your discipline, your focus, your commitment to yourself. And that's why those Fitbits are so popular. You're celebrating your progress. Video games. Oh, look, come on, you get to the next level. So if we can take that, the way our brain is wired to look for progress, and I open up my weekly calls with my assistant, like, what are our wins? What progress have we made? Starting every week like that is so crucial to getting off this I'm not enough, because whatever we focus on, we get more of.
So I have a question, totally off center from, hey, you're a sales expert, come on and teach us how to sell. I'm just a therapy patient on a couch right now.
Okay.
So put that hat on, whatever that is. Sigmund, please. So I'll tell you how I am. I have always prided myself on being a little bit anti-establishment, a little bit different. And when this whole internet economy emerged, was right around the time I transitioned from being a musician, where being quirky and whatever is par for the course. Suddenly I saw the internet and it was like, oh, there's a way that you can be in business and have your personality and your uniqueness become part of your asset and your equity, right? So it always worked really well for me. And the more and I'll say this, it's almost, for me, it's become like a truism, like a one of the, call it the 11th commandment. The more you lean into being yourself, thou shalt have the result that you're looking for, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but what I wonder, I'm having this little existential crisis right now. That all sounds well and good, and it sounds like I'm really evolved. But what if I was really leaning into being myself, and for some reason it stopped working?
Oh, yes.
Would it call into question this idea of being yourself as being enough? And I'm asking because I imagine there are people who are out there who really feel like they're yes. expressing and they're being themselves, but they maybe haven't found the message to market match yet, where themselves isn't clicking. And so there's going to be a temptation to just go, I just need to be more like other people.
Hmm.
How do you counsel those people, hypothetically me, and in reality,
Okay.
probably someone else?
Well, we've come full circle from how you opened up the interview, which is how do we break through the clutter? And there's so many people out there that are coaches, consultants, whatever you want to say, salespeople, storytellers, on and on and on. It goes back to whether you have a mindset of abundance or a mindset of scarcity. If you have an abundance mindset, you're not afraid of the rejection and the no's. If I'm being myself and something stops, it doesn't mean it's stopping forever. And there are an abundance of people who are going to resonate with me. They may not play piano like you do, Jeff, but there's a passion there for something. And so they're going to either relate to your discipline with your fitness, your passion, and how you've transitioned your discipline with music into business. And they're going to say, that's for me. This person, Jeff, is living his life in a way that is working for him. And if it can work for him, I can see myself in his story. The minute you start trying to be like everybody else, do we really need another Brene Brown? No, she's great. If anybody else tries to copy that, it's going to be a sad imitation. I mean, actors get accused of that sometimes. Oh, that's the, poor man so-and-so. There's only one Brad Pitt, there's only whatever. And it all keeps coming back to that internal voice saying who you are is not enough. So you can't put that out there. No one's you got to wow people and impress them. And if you, no, there's going to be people that are going to meet me where I am. And they're going to see themselves in my stories. The more vulnerable I am with what it felt like to be laid off, or how I've overcome my own feeling of being an imposter syndrome, all those things, when you let that in and let people realize you haven't always been where you are, but you figured it out and a roadmap to help them, that's always going to work, in my opinion. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh my gosh, it nailed the question. Yeah, I was lobbing you up for a single or a double. I wasn't expecting a home run, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Oscar Wilde said it. He said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken." And but you're totally right. That when you said abundance versus scarcity mindset, that is it. Because if you're and a lot of people they think they're being themselves, but really they're finding themselves. It's
Nice.
not all the way there. It takes some time. I've been pumping content out to the internet and trying to find my message and crystallize my intent and my mission and my purpose and my persona and what word I use to convey what meaning and everything. And I'm probably 1,500 to 2,000 pieces of content in between lives, training videos, free giveaway content, interviews, and so on. And I'm still figuring it out. So it takes a lot of time. And that's just in the last 2 years. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years since I quit that job or got fired from that job at 16. So, but if it's not working, if it's not getting traction, it means there's more work to be done. But then, right, like you said, it begs a fundamental question: Is the world so small that I've already experienced all the options that they didn't click, or is the world so big that my experience is this tiny little subset, and it would be ridiculous for me to draw a big conclusion from my tiny little subset?
Exactly.
Probably the latter.
Probably the latter.
And keep being yourself because everyone else is taken.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, and it's when those thoughts come up, it's our choice. I tell people, think of yourself as the director of your own life, and your life is a movie. And you can change the location, the casting. And if we start projecting into the future and playing a horror movie out of what if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if I'm myself and nobody wants to buy anymore, and blah, 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 you just say cut. Just like a movie director. Cut. We're the thinker thinking the thoughts. So thoughts are not thinking us. And we sometimes forget that. So we need to zoom out, see the big picture. Wait a minute, I get to yell cut. And that's not the horror movie I want to play about what's going to happen to me in the future or the world.
Like, this is supposed to be a romantic comedy. Cut the horror scene.
Yes.
Start over. So I'm curious, like, what's an example you could give of maybe a client or even yourself, just some scenario where somebody was really invested in playing out a scene that wasn't working, and you were able to get them to say cut and go back, and then what was the rework that you did that allowed them to go replay the scene and have it work out?
Well, I was working with Olympus Medical, and they had said, we make equipment, and we've got so much technical information to share. We really think that's important. And I, as politely as possible, said, how's that working for you? Kind of answer question we've heard from Dr. And they go, well, you're not winning as much as we want. And I said, okay. So when I'm working with other people, I don't usually say cut. I usually just reserve that for my own internal conversation. So I said, what if, which is a great phrase for everybody to have. And I just said, what if, because it taps us into the right side of our brain where imagination and storytelling and creativity lives. So get to imagine another way of being. I said, well, what if instead of going to doctors and saying what you're saying now, which is, our equipment makes the surgeries go 30% faster. Do you want one, doc? You told a story instead. And they said, well, we don't know how to tell stories. Don't worry, I can show you that. And so I said, here's what I asked a few questions. And so now they're telling this story. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was 6 months ago down at Long Beach Memorial using our equipment, and he could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room. And if you've ever been waiting for somebody you love to come out of surgery, every minute feels like an hour. He came out an hour earlier than expected and put them out of their waiting misery, said, good news. The scope showed they don't have cancer. They're going to be okay. Then the doctor turns to the rep and said, you know what? That's why I became a doctor, for moments like this. Now that salesperson tells that story to another doctor at another hospital, and that doctor sees himself in that story and says, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too. Boom. And the people at Olympus said, oh my God, that gives us chills. Not only are we not telling stories, it never occurred to us to think of the patient's family as a character in the story. And you'll see, there's some skill in telling that story where I pull you in by saying, if you've ever waited for someone you love. So that pulls you in. And even if you haven't, you probably know somebody who has, right? And then by saying the doctor's the hero of the story, not the Olympus rep, not the equipment. The doctor put those patient's family out of their waiting misery, an emotional word. Because when we tug at people's heartstrings, they open their purse strings.
Ooh, say that again.
When you tug at people's heartstrings, they open their purse strings.
I mean, truer words, folks, truer words. First of all, I'm not even in the medical profession, and whatever this equipment is, I want to buy some. Right? No, I mean, really, I'm glad I asked the question. Sometimes I hate people putting on the spot with tell me a time when, but I'm really glad I did, because that was really beautiful. That wasn't just interesting. It was actually beautiful. I wasn't expecting art on this show, but that was good. You pulled my purse strings. Can I buy something now? Or my heartstrings. That was Freudian.
Yes.
So no, that was great. I'm curious though. One of the things I noticed you did, we always talk about finding your why. Right? We even mentioned the Simon Sinek TED Talk, right?
Yep.
Start with why. And we talk about finding your why. And so often businesses, it's become more prevalent now to talk about why you do what you do. Pretty much since Simon told us, people buy why you do what you do.
Yep.
But your sales pitch was about why the customer does what they do.
Exactly.
I'm assuming that wasn't just an accident or a coincidence.
No, not at all.
Is that something you actively teach people, is how to identify the why of their customer and tap into that with their pitch?
Yes. I teach people that the more you put your empathy hat on and the better you can describe their problem and what their motivation is, the better they think they have their solution. And that's where you go from what I call from being invisible. And then there's some rungs on a ladder I created where you're interesting. And then you get at the top where you're irresistible. That's what makes you irresistible, is when because we're wired for stories. And when you learn how to tell a story, then everybody wants to hear a story. Everybody has time for a story. The medical profession, those salespeople are used to catching doctors at the hospitals between surgeries or bringing in Starbucks and seeing them in their office. They can't do any of that right now.
Yeah.
And so they have to learn how to tell stories in a whole new way to even get the virtual appointment and then get on a virtual call. They better have a good story. And people always have time for a story. They don't have time for facts and figures about what you do.
Yeah, think about it. If you want to catch somebody off guard, ask them to cite a fact. Hey, doctor, you're a heart surgeon. What percentage of myocardial infarctions are 100% recovery over a 5-year span? like they should know that, but off the top of their head, they can't remember it. But if you say, hey, tell me a story about a patient that fully recovered,
Yes.
instant recall. Stories are what stick.
That's it.
Um,
It's the emotional glue.
yeah, exactly. So you use two words, invisible and irresistible. That's a great segue into me. You have a domain, go from invisible to irresistible.com. And given that we're about out of time and I'm about to be late for my Uber, let's talk about it. How can the world go get more of this amazingness that you've just scratched the surface of here in this conversation?
Sure. I mean, if anybody wants my free PDF on storytelling tips, they can just text the word pitch to 66866 or go to my website, go from invisible to irresistible. And it's a way that I teach people step by step how to become a master storyteller. It even helps your personal life become a better storyteller. A friend of mine said, my kid asked me to tell him a bedtime story and I'm bad at it. Can you help me? And I said, yes. And then really the storytelling allows you to become magnetic and memorable, which are two big problems that we have as entrepreneurs. Is how do we pull people in instead of having to push out a bunch of stuff and hope it sticks? And then how can we make something memorable? And hopefully you're going to remember that story of the doctor putting the patient's family out of the misery as an example of the power of that, really, because it touches our heart.
Yeah, I will share briefly because you've totally just helped me out. I'm going to win a watch because of what you just said. So I have a competition internally with some other guys in my business. We have a sales letter that's performing really well, but we want to increase conversions. And so three of us said, hey, before we go hire some expensive copywriter to beat the control, let's see if we can beat the control. And we'll make it a friendly wager where between the three of us, we're all going to rewrite the sales letter ourselves. And whoever wins, the company's going to buy a Rolex, and whoever wins gets to wear the Rolex. But then if somebody else beats them, it's like a title belt. You have to give the Rolex over. So I'm going to go get your PDF right now.
Nice.
And I'm going to use it to game the system and win the contest. So
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, man. And what about socially? Do you put out content? Can people connect with you kind of more personally?
Yes. I'm the Pitch Whisperer on Instagram.
Ooh.
And so if you can't remember Better Selling Through Storytelling or my name, just remember the Pitch Whisperer, Google that, and all my content on all the platforms comes up. And I put out like blog ideas like The Elevator Pitch is Dead, Long Live the Elevator Story, how to go from invisible to irresistible, all those kinds of things, and little video contents as well.
What about hiring you for like consulting and, more like at a B2B level? Are you available for that?
Yes. In fact, I'm speaking on being hired to help a mortgage company, which does B2B sales for their mortgages to get brokers to refer them. So yes, I do a lot of consulting for healthcare, tech, and financial services. And
could they just like DM you through your Instagram? Is that a...
Sure, that's one way. Yeah, I'll go to my website. My speaking agent's contact is there as well.
Okay.
They usually keep track of all the incoming inquiries about when and if I'm available. The thing with virtual now is I'm able to do multiple keynotes and not have to travel. That's wonderful.
Thank you for being here on Millionaire Secrets. On behalf of the Millionaire Secrets audience, is there any parting thoughts, anything you'd like to share as we wrap?
Yes, a favorite quote of mine from Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis pro. Key to success is confidence. Key to confidence is preparation.
John has a ton of experience when it comes to sales and storytelling. And if you love that interview, then you're definitely going to love the one I did with Brant Pinvidic, where he talks about his 3-minute rule and how sales come from your story, not your business. Check it out. Thanks for listening.